In this video, we will learn more about the importance of mapping in central finance, how the mapping is being configured in central finance, what is a separate tool that we have in central finance for mapping, what are the different steps involved in mapping, and I will explain you the tools in detail in the further slides. Before that, let me just recap you the importance of mapping. As we know, the documents are getting replicated from source to the target. And we have to define the mapping values that needs to be updated while creating a document entry in central finance. Suppose, let's take an example. We have a company code 1000 in a source, but due to some specific requirements, we have made some changes and made it to some XY01. Let's suppose that one. So what we have to tell the system that whenever a document carrying a company code of 1000 coming from the source, it needs to be updated as XY01 as I said previously. So this rule needs to be maintained and it needs to be obeyed by the systems while they're replicating data while coming from the source to the target. Let us talk more about the overview of CFIN mapping. There are three types of mappings available in central finance. Let us take one by one with example. The first one is known as the key mapping, which is known as the business object identifiers. All those examples like customer ID, vendor ID and other master data related like profit center and cost centers, these mappings needs to be maintained and are known as key mapping. Next one, those values which needs to be configured in the system, some TR needs to be imported and all, such type of mappings are known as the value mapping or the codes mapping. For example, company codes and payment terms. Now, we have some separate short living cost object mapping also available in the systems. For example, internal order. This comes under the cost object mapping. When a value coming from the source, we'll have some suppose customer number and we have maintained some other customer number at the target end. These values will be updated as per the mapping available in your system. Now we have understood that there are in general three types of mapping. So how we maintain the mapping in the system? So mapping is just not keeping of values A to B and something like that. We have to provide proper system connections mappings, and then we have a mapping entity. When I say mapping entity, it means that particular field I'm talking about that will be brought up in that document when it will come from the source. So let us discuss step by step that what are the steps involved in the mapping. First one is the setup of the systems. These steps includes your setting up your logical system, then your target system and your RFC connections. Next step is define the technical setting for all the involved systems. So when you have a logical system, target system, RFC connections, in this step you assign a business system corresponding to that logical system and the RFC connections. So when you select any business system is basically the name of your logical system at the target side. So what actually it will go through the RFC connections, it will connect you to the logical system, and the logical system nothing but your source system. Now for which all values you want to provide a mapping. In this step you define the mapping actions for the mapping entities. Let us talk about one example. You have a term payment method. So but you don't require your payment method in their system for your reporting purposes. So what you will do? Will you provide an extra mapping values there? No. So what you will do, when a document bring a payment terms with it, you define the mapping actions. So what are the different types of mapping actions? There are four types of mapping actions in central finance. First one is mapping obligatory. So when you define some mapping actions for any of the field, any of the value as mapping obligatory, you need to maintain the mapping values, else the system will throw an error. Next one is map if possible. In this mapping actions, what happens if you have provided the data for the mapping for those values, mapping will take place, otherwise it will create the value that it has brought up as it is. The third mapping action is keep the data, means nothing needs to be changed, whatever the data you have brought up, bring it and update it as it is. And the fourth one is the clear data, where the data coming from the source in the document will be erased out and it will keep it as a blank and it will not check the mapping for that value. So next one is what is the configuration step for the mapping. Here you can see that the step how you do the define the value mapping, financial accounting news, central finance, target system setting, mapping, define value mapping, and then maintain the value mapping. So when we'll start looking into central finance sessions in detail, I will explain you how to do the mapping, what are the internal code IDs, what are the external code IDs, how it is mapped, what are the different types of error that you can see while doing a mapping. As we know, in central finance, we have a mapping tool that is known as with the T code fins underscore CFIN underscore map underscore manage. This tool helps us to do the mass upload of the mapping values that we require in central finance. Now let me explain you how does it work. The first thing is the mapping entity. You can see mapping entity is the field for which you want to do the mapping. This can be anything like company code, profit center, cost center, and then you have a GLs as well, payment terms, payment methods, chart of accounts, controlling area, and many more. Now you have a source system. Source system is nothing but your logical system that is connected to the source system via RFC connections. Now how you will up, and you can see that there are 5 user actions: display mapping, generate templates, upload mappings, download mappings, and delete mappings. Let me explain you with how you upload the mappings with the first. So the very first step is that you select for which mapping entity you want to upload the mappings, select that entity and select the radio button generate template. Then you provide a file name or path to the file, use your CSV separator as well, and generate a template. Once you have a template with you, you just provide all the input parameters to the template as per the template requirement. Then you select the upload the mapping, and there is a test run below this in this screen, which is not available right now here, and you can do a test run. This uploading of values or mapping entities will go to the source as well and check that the value that you are actually trying to map, does it really exist or there or not. So you have a several you might have a several errors that okay, there is errors in the format, there is errors in the existence of those values. Maybe sometimes you are trying to do 1:n mapping, which is also not possible, and many more other errors. Some values are not available at target end. It will also say that, okay, you are trying to map this value, but this does not exist at target end. Once you resolve all those errors, then you can remove that tick mark from the tester and you can upload the mappings. Then you can, what the values actually have been mapped, you can also get it from the display mapping. Select display mapping, and for the again mapping entity you select and select the source system, execute, you will get what the values have been mapped in the system. Now if you want it to keep it for your further purpose, that what have been uploaded in the system, you can download the mappings. In case you wanted to change the mappings, again generate a template, or you wanted to do some small changes to these mapping values, select only those values and delete mappings. Always try to do with a test run, and then you can come to know that okay, it can be deleted or not. Thank you for listening.